Hi, my name is Lyric, and today we are continuing the conspiracy theory Iceberg by the man Wendigoon. We are on part 6. Now, as you know, if you haven't watched the first 5 parts, go react to them. But now we're on to part 6. As you know, we're doing all parts of the layer in one video, and this one's gonna be really long because this is in 3 parts. We're reacting to all in one video, so yeah, this is a video you're probably gonna want to like sit back, maybe watch it in the background, cop some popcorn or whatever, as we go deep into the 6th layer of the conspiracy theory iceberg. We're in the second half now, and yeah, I'm not gonna waste too much time because I guess this video is already gonna be long, so I'm not gonna have that long of an intro. But I will say that if you watch this entire conspiracy theory video, it's probably gonna be over an hour long. It's definitely gonna be over an hour long, and you still don't even like the video or subscribe or even like leave a comment. What are you doing, bro? What are you doing, bro? And make sure to subscribe and like, because it takes more time for me to say the word subscribe and like than it takes you to actually subscribe and like. Think about that. Alright, let's go. Wendigoon, Conspiracy Theory Iceberg, Part 6.
We are on to Tier 6, and I am excited for this one. Whenever I started out
Tier
with
6,
Iceberg,
man.
I was really looking forward to like the mind-altering, weird, SCP-like, super dimensional things that like rewrite history and all of that. And while I've enjoyed the entire Iceberg up to this is the kind of stuff that I was hyped for. Like, this is the reason I wanted to do it. Also, as you can see, this is 1/3 instead of 1/2, and I'm sorry about that, but given the amount of material to cover and the fact that
I'll react to all at one, man. It's alright.
Quality with the descriptions, then getting them out as fast as I can, I decided to make them shorter so that I can get them out faster. So sorry about that, but hopefully it's worth it. One thing to mention before we get started, there is now a Wendigoon subreddit. User by the name of Talker409 has been gracious enough to start a Wendigoon subreddit for people to discuss videos, topics, and all of that. I have nothing to do with it, it's all them, but I will be putting a link in the description to the subreddit where you can talk about video topics, things mentioned in the videos, and make fun of me all you want. So let's go ahead and get into it, and as always, thank you for watching. Tier 6 is described as transcended, and the description reads, "At this depth, the detachment from reality starts to kick in. The world you once knew begins to fall and crumble apart, but in a good kind of way. The human questions are suddenly interesting again, and you see life for what it is. The purpose is back." First off, we have Boggendorf, which can relate to the Boggendorf affair as well as the Boggendorf twins themselves. While you've probably seen an image of the Boggendorf twins, you may not know much about them. The Boggendorf twins were TV producers in the 70s who hosted several shows focusing on science, history, and things like that. The Boggendorf affair, which brought a lot of attention towards the twins, had to do with the legitimacy of the doctorates they had received. See, the dissertation they did in order to receive their doctorates was about what the universe existed like before the Big Bang. But that simply opened the door to the weirdness of these two brothers. For example, each of them has an IQ of over 200.
Wow.
But that in perspective, Albert Einstein's was somewhere around 140. Furthermore, they've obtained several scientific feats, such as learning the entirety of the French language in 1 week, supposedly from hearing it around, as well as proposing theories of relativity and quantum mechanics years before they were ever proven by modern means. Furthermore, the Boggendorf twins are direct descendants from royal European blood. Their scientific theories get quite odd, relating from everything to there is a natural through line that exists through all of science and history and literature and all of it that relates back to one higher plane of existence that we don't understand yet. Also, each of the Boggendorf twins say that they themselves can communicate with higher order beings such as extraterrestrials and angels. I should add that
this is a lot of really weird things.
Has been said for legends to contain the souls of angels and spirits, and that all members of that bloodline have special powers. There's also a theory known as the bog pill that
I'll probably just keep the royals in power though.
The majority of Big Pharma. Furthermore, that the two of themselves have the sole patent to genetic engineering. It's believed from this that the first designer baby will be a Boggendorf child. Also, given the European traditional religion that they subscribe to, there is a legend that 2 archangels will come down preceding the return of Christ and walk on earth and give the gift of knowledge to man. Therefore, many people believe that the Boggendorf brothers themselves are archangels. Saint is angel.
That one's really weird. How have I never heard of them before? That's just a weird combination of everything with them. Like, how? Like, look at them. What? Just looking at them, you would not assume these people have an IQ of 200. You would they look like they have an IQ of -2. But for them to have an IQ of 200 and then have these weird scientific theories and also be connected to royalty.
There's tricky ones, and I want to take this moment to explain what's been happening with some of the research for this. First of all, a huge thank you to my girlfriend. You all saw her in the last Thursdayism video in which she talked about last Thursdayism. She was able to find a large catalog that had direct links for each of these topics, or at least the majority of them, and it has been super helpful in doing this entire iceberg, so very big thank you for that. Love you, sweetie. However, some of the other topics have been near impossible to find any information on, so I have been getting help from the Discord server, from YouTube comments, and all of that. So if someone gave me information that led me to figuring out something about this, I'm going to accredit them whenever the topic comes up. So for this one, thank you, Neoclassical Succubus, from the Patreon Discord.
What a great name.
Find out information. I could still find nothing concrete on Santa's Angels. However, there is a list of acronyms, and given the odd capitalization of the word saint, I believe it does stand for an acronym. One such acronym I found was Security Administrators Integrated Network Tool. In other words, it is something that a security administrator would use within a network or server to prevent things within the server from either breaking the rules or reaching the boundaries. So if you are to take the whole brain in the vat concept, or the idea that we all exist within a simulation, then angels and other supernatural entities could be interpreted as simply tools being used by the security administrator to keep us all in check. However, I want to take this opportunity to throw up a theory of my own about the iceberg itself. In trying to research this thing, I have gone down some old pathways. One of which led me to find the 4chan account of the artist who did the artwork for the iceberg itself. He said that through NDA he couldn't give specific examples, however there is purposeful disinfo later within the iceberg for a reason he couldn't explain why, and I'm going to try to do that now. If some of these topics are actually true, and if this iceberg is, as some believes, to hold hidden information with it that is not only mind altering but possibly illegal in several circumstances, then it makes sense for the person who created it to implement disinfo within it in order to have an air of legitimacy whenever they deny any wrongdoing. What I mean by this is the ultimate example of whenever someone says it's just a joke before saying something that definitely isn't a joke.
Haha, very funny, joking video.
Iceberg, then that makes the creator non-liable, or at least less liable, if anything were to come of information in it. Like, I don't know, someone making a YouTube video and figuring out that all the government is secret alien lizard people. I'm still going to treat every topic the same, but if I get to a topic later and mention that I believe it's disinfo, this is what I'm referring to.
Alright.
Anyway, moving on. Human zoos is exactly what it says. Famous examples exist throughout history we're all aware of, such as old freak shows that used to have.
That's what I was gonna say, like
people
freak
with
shows.
Genetic abnormalities or disformations across their body, as well as ethnic human zoos that came about later, especially in Britain during the 17 and 1800s, in which people from far off tribes were brought to the homeland in order to show off different exotic ethnicities. What you may not know is that this is still practiced around the world today, if in lesser amounts. The most recent example I could find of this was in 2012 at the Bay of Bengal. Certain people were selling out other tribes for tour boat guides, so people could go by and watch a tribe that's had no direct interaction with humanity off from a distance, take pictures, and show them off in their primitive state of being. However, this isn't the only one, and there still exist several examples in third world countries of people profiting off the existence of these lesser civilizations. Georgia gods.
That's not really a conspiracy, that's just kind of sad.
In 1979, a man using the pseudonym of
This one's weird.
Christian approached stonemasons within Georgia. R.C. Christian had very specific rules for the structure, which was to be built 10 miles outside of Elberton, Georgia. The masons, not liking the structure itself, quoted a completely astronomical price, to which he had no problem paying it, saying that this has been planned for over 30 years and that the people who put it together were a group of Americans who wanted a new age of reason.
Sorry, we got an interruption.
Who put it together were a group of Americans.
This one's so weird.
Who wanted a new age of reason. As you could imagine, they all wish to remain anonymous. So what actually is the structure? Well, it is a compass, calendar, and clock made out of stone with 10 different rules laid out across 8 different languages, along with 4 ancient languages lying at the top. The 10 rules listed on the structure itself are as follows. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Unite humanity with a living new language. Rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Balance
We got another interruption, so sorry.
rights and social duties. Prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature, leave room for nature. Two of which of the ancient languages at the top include hieroglyphics from Egypt and Babylonian and Sumerian languages. Located next to the statue is a stone plaque that explains a bit more about it, such as the physical dimensions, as well as the phrase, "Let these be guide stones to an age of reason." The statue has been vandalized several times with things such as destroy the New World Order or death to the New World Order, and it is
I saw something
to be the 10 Commandments of the Antichrist. Coriander.
I mean, it's that's got to be one of the most suspicious things I've ever seen in my entire life. Some random dudes just say, "Oh yeah, you gotta make this now because it's been 30 years in the making," and it says some weird shit like that. And I mean, it's just one of the most suspicious things I've ever seen. Didn't it get like vandalized? Like, not I think it got vandalized by stuff like that, but like, I swear I saw something about it getting like blown up. I'm googling this right now. Georgia Guidestones blown up. July 6, 2022. The Georgia Guidestones got blown up. Yeah, I heard about this. Inscribed with moralistic instructions. What are you talking about, Washington Post? That was creepy. Okay, yeah.
Coriander veins relates to the secret health benefits of coriander, also.
Nope. This isn't what I ordered.
I'd like to discuss birth control.
We speak up for.
Also known
Sorry
as
for the ad.
cilantro. Cilantro, as many of you may know, is a very decisive food in that about half the population views it as delicious, while the other half says it tastes like dish soap. The reason for this is inherited genes can express the chemical within cilantro one way, while in other genes it can express it in the other. However, the theory about it being a superfood takes it a step further. If cilantro tastes good to you, then your genes are automatically aligned with healthiness and you are less predisposed to physical conditions. Whereas if cilantro tastes bad to you, you have genetic abnormalities that make you more prone to diseases. Everyone needs to take cilantro according to this theory, but your kinness to it is also your likeness to health itself. So therefore, cilantro is both a super medicine, but also a super detector of your physical condition. Mad honey is a reference to a special kind of honey made in Nepal and Turkey, which is brought about by using bees who collected pollen from rhododendron flowers. This combination creates a very particular honey that contains a neurotoxin known as granotoxin. So why do people make this? Because the honey contains hallucinogenic effects. It's even believed that people such as Aristotle and Julius Caesar would partake of the honey's abilities in order to receive higher order thoughts. Several monks of the Nepal region believe that the honey itself is a way of leaving this physical plane and being able to interact with the spiritual. It's even been historically used in battle for armies to poison other armies who thought that the honey was just normal honey and took way too much of it. While death is rare, it is a neurotoxin, so if consumed in large enough amounts, it can lead to things like diaphragm paralysis, which will kill you. FWD7. Now, interestingly enough, I can't find what the FWD stands for. If you know, please leave it in the comments. However, all the links I found related to it are talking about the 7/7 attacks that occurred in 2005 in London. In these attacks, 4 men from the Middle East, supposedly working with Al-Qaeda, wore suicide packs onto public train systems and detonated themselves, killing a total of 39 people. The only evidence that these men themselves were the ones who committed the attacks was local hearsay from people who were nearby who claimed to have seen someone matching their description, as well as this CCTV footage of the 4 men together wearing backpacks. However, a man named John Hill made a video shortly after the attacks, which was an hour long, entitled The 7/7 Ripple Effect. In it, he spoke of how all of these attacks were a fabrication by the combined might of the Mossad and MI5. He said that the 4 men in the video were framed and that the trains were detonated to blow from underneath on the tracks themselves, and it was done in order to perpetuate a state of fear and terror within England and later justify further expansion out. John Hill was immediately arrested for this.
Wow,
He
that's
kept in prison
suspicious.
for a few days and then let go, to which he deleted all records of his sayings off of the internet, and it has led many to believe that there was a reason they were so afraid of his opinions. And
Okay, when someone says something like that, you don't immediately believe it, right? But when they then arrest him, and then he suddenly, after getting arrested, deletes everything that he said off the internet, that's hella suspicious. That makes it way more suspicious. Okay.
animal spine is exactly what it says. Throughout history, there have been several reports and actual evidence of animals being used in times of war to spy on the enemy. Some of the more confirmed theories of this is during World War I, Germans would use dogs to relay messages back and forth to each other across trench lines, as well as dolphins, which have been known to be trained by the CIA, have been used in order to report information and even spell out words on enemy presence. However, there are some more extreme theories, such as in the CIA declassified JFK documents, there was something known as the acoustic kitty, which was the CIA wiring a cat with wires and beams in order to make a living cat a wireless radio transmitter. Not only that, but whenever Egyptians were attacked by sharks on the Red Sea, they blamed Israel, saying that Israel was purposely training sharks to attack people. In researching this, I kept coming across the Hartlepool monkey. During a time that France was at war with England in the 1700s, a French boat was sunk off the coast of England. The local town of Hartlepool came outside to see if there were any survivors, to which the only survivor was a small monkey in a Navy officer's uniform. The people of Hartlepool, having never seen a Frenchman before, believed the monkey to just be what Frenchmen look like and began interrogating it. After the monkey didn't reveal any information, they had an official try and hanged the monkey in the town. This would be the first example of
That's gotta be one of the most hilarious things I've ever heard in my entire life. How has Salmonella never addressed this? This seems like such a thing Salmonella would talk about in one of his videos.
animal spying.
He just came back, so he needs to talk about that.
Been able to spy, and the town of Hartlepool is so proud about it that their name of their rugby team is the Monkey Hangers.
What?
That was too weird to not mention, so you're welcome. Trepanine is
What?
a mostly old world used concept in which a hole is bored into the skull in order to either relieve pressure
Hey,
or
speaking of Salmonella, he mentioned this in one of his videos.
take away internal bleeding. It's been used throughout history to cure everything from epilepsy to headaches. I should mention that an esoteric philosopher by the name of John Michel believed that trepanine could be used in order to achieve a higher plane of being. The two main thought processes behind this is that when you are a child, your skull is very soft and malleable, and therefore your brain is allowed to expand and think in different directions. As we get old and the skull calcifies and hardens, it becomes more difficult for people to achieve true understanding. Therefore, if you drill a hole in your own skull, you're able to quite literally think outside the box. Furthermore, there are old world philosophies, specifically Eastern religions, that used to practice this as a way of escaping the physical being and being able to project your consciousness. John Michel, which I mentioned earlier, on 3 separate attempts, tried to drill a hole in his skull, the 3rd time succeeding using a drill bit, and says that
That's not
the
good.
process worked and he is able to achieve a higher plane of existence. So yeah, make of that what you will.
Yeah, don't try that one at home.
Heating is referring to a problem within physics in which the way the sun is heated doesn't make sense. The corona itself is the brim around the sun that looks like fire coming off of it that can be seen very clearly during a solar eclipse. The issue with coronal heating can best be described as this. If you are standing near a campfire and you feel yourself getting very, very hot, you can take one step away, and because of the way that heat works in the atmosphere and throughout given space, you are now cool all of a sudden because it's such a differential. However, that's not how it works with the sun. To this day, no one knows exactly why. However, the leading theory is that it's due to the magnetic field. The way the sun works, if you are an object within a given distance to it, the heat sort of tracks you and follows you to a given location while
That's
maintaining a
weird.
specific temperature. This has led many to believe that around the sun, the corona works as a sort of aura that is used in order to give a specifically needed amount of energy to different creatures. Again, if it wasn't for the coronal heating pattern, Earth itself could not exist. Several have adopted this theory and believe that the sun is either a living entity or that whatever is controlling the corona around it is a sort of spirit or old world god.
That's a cool
allowing
theory.
our solar system to exist.
I like that one.
GGQEP stands for gadolinium gallium garnet quantum electronic processor.
Say that 5 times fast.
So what does that mean? Well, the gadolinium gallium garnet
Gadolinium gallium garnet.
particular type of metal. This synthetic metal has been determined to be the perfect candidate for data storage. It has a crystalline structure, which simply means it's composed of a cubic lattice on a microscopic scale and has a hardness similar to topaz. Given chemistry equations, a 5 centimeter cube of the material would be roughly 1 mole. The structure is so compacted that 1 mole of it, or in other words the 5 centimeter cube, is capable of holding 8,153 exabytes. The reason
Oh my
we've never
God.
heard of exabytes is
'Cause they're-
because 1 exabyte
it's like
is
1,000
1
petabytes.
billion gigabytes. To put that into perspective, the
Yeah,
entire
1,000
internet,
petabytes.
with every single thing on it that exists on it at the moment, is about 700 exabytes. Remember, a cube this size
What
could
the
hold
hell?
8,153 of those, or in other words, about 11 internets. QEP, or quantum electronic processor, should ring a bell because of that word quantum mentioned again. As mentioned before in quantum suicide, the definition of the word quantum is that things that are moving cannot be determined and will never be determined until viewed directly. So what would a quantum processor be? Well, that would be a processor that not determines things in binary, i.e. 0 and 1, but it would determine everything between 0 and 1 simultaneously at once. However, as we know from quantum mechanics and the whole Schrodinger's cat theory, if you were to actually look at what it was determining at any given moment, the whole plan falls apart. But because of quantum entanglement and the fact that two things can be working relative to each other, you could simply have a binary code attached to the non-binary quantum processor, and that would be able
It's about to explode.
display to us everything happening between 0 and 1 in a manner that we could understand. Essentially, you would use quantum entanglement on a quantum value in order to make it digestible. What this means is that a quantum processor, or more specifically the quantum electronic processor, when used in a computer, would process information instantly. And by instantly, I mean as much instant as the electrons can come through the machine and give us a value. Therefore, if you were to combine the gadolinium gallium garnet with the quantum electronic processor, you would have a computer that can contain the entirety of all information put online ever and be able to get any of it.
When can I
in
get one
a
of these?
matter
When are they
of
coming out?
time that we can't even process as being too short. There are theories this device already exists within government agencies. However, it is the theory behind the idea for a truly perfect computer. Empty internet is the
Alright.
theory that the majority of users on the
Got an ad, sorry.
internet are not users but are a form of bot. Essentially, the theory says
Majority.
that the internet itself was used as a learning tool for whatever powers at hand to determine how people react. The reason that whenever you post something or say something and you get the responses that you expect to get is because this simulation, or the internet itself, is producing responses that are expected and creating the simulation of interaction with other people. However, this can be taken a step further, and applying the jar in the vat concept that I mentioned in the last year, the idea that every stimuli we experience is a fake, and you apply that to the internet, then us being on the internet and thinking we're talking to other people is no different from our brain being in a jar and thinking we're experiencing the real world. This is again another use of solipsism and the idea of I think,
Therefore I am,
therefore I am. Oh boy, this one. Okay.
Oh,
The
God.
Dogon tribe is an African tribe located just south of Egypt that wasn't discovered until the 1930s. This tribe has had no contact with the outside world and to this day keeps everyone else at arm's length and simply talks to other researchers about their understandings and ideology without taking any handouts or sort of advancements from the world around them. The Dogon tribe, however, have a very interesting lore to their people's creation. According to them, some 4,000 years ago, a group of people known as the Nomos appeared in their village. They came down from what they describe as a spinning ship and shared their knowledge with the Dogon tribe. According to them, they were from the third smallest star in the Sirius system. Now, at the time in the 1930s, we only knew of one star where Sirius was located. The Dogon tribe told researchers for years that there was a second star there, and using modern technology and telescopes, we found out that they were right, and there was a second star that was previously unseen. The Dogon tribe persists that there is a third star, Sirius C, the ones that the Nomos would be from, located in the same area, but to this day it's supposedly so small we can't see it. However, the orbits of Sirius A and B indicate that there's probably a third planet there. Not only that, but as long as this tribe's been discovered, they have maintained the idea that the Earth is round and circles around the sun. Something that is a very intense concept for a tribe with no interaction with science or the outside world. However, it goes even deeper than that. This tribe, ever since they were discovered, had a very firm grasp and understanding of atoms and the fact that atoms compose everything, that they give off very slight vibrations, and even had the concept of string theory in their art and stories, saying that there are branching universes that exist because of these constant factors that are seen throughout atoms in the world. All of this, they said, was brought to them from the Nomos aliens. Their stories of the Nomos are very deep, but
this one's really interesting.
They said that the Nomos originally stopped on Mars and stayed there for some thousand years when it was water and a functioning paradise until a catastrophe happened and they had to leave and come to Earth. Also, given
there has been water found on Mars.
It seems that Mars at one point had water on it,
right?
And furthermore, that there was a natural catastrophe that wiped out the planet's surface. Furthermore, they say that the Nomos segregated into several different tribes known as the Greys, the Anus, and the Austras. The stories of these three alien races loops back and forth, and again, this Dogon tribe with no connection to the outside world had very similar tellings in their legends of things that happened in the Judeo-Christian Bible, such as tying certain miracles and events of prophets into these legends of the aliens. And furthermore, they said that the Austras were eventually wiped out by the two other groups, and that the Austras appeared as normal humans, except for the small detail that they were giants. And boom.
Giants. It goes back around. We ended up on giants. Everything that is long and detailed and is really interesting, in this iceberg, always ends up with giants, man. Always ends up.
Theory that ties back to
this should just be called 10-hour documentary proving giants.
The giants and the Nephilim.
That's what the
it's all
iceberg
connected.
is.
The Dogon tribe exists as a very surreal example.
It's all connected.
Of a group of people having information that they, by no logical means, should possibly have.
This one's very
unless,
interesting.
Of course, their story is true. Dark City Nonfiction is referring to the 90 movies Dark Fiction and simply saying that the concepts from within the movie are nonfiction. In the movie, a character named John is chased around his hometown by aliens before figuring out that he has had implanted memories, but not only him, that several other people have. Turns out that aliens are using this group of humans as a sort of test to see how humans react to different stimuli in order to just learn more about people. At the end of the movie, it's discovered by John that this entire ecosystem that he thinks is the real world is actually just sort of a fish tank floating randomly through space. Aliens in this movie could control reality and implant memories into people. This all adds back to the idea that we exist within a simulation. Microdot.gif is in reference to the concept of microdots. Microdots are purposeful information that is hidden within very small dots or characters on whatever item given that cannot be read with the human eye but can be picked up in scans and QR codes. However, theories about microdots go a bit further with the idea that they can be used to implant subliminal messages into the user. And while I could not find a specific GIF about these microdots, there were several references to people when experiencing drugs, so there were these tiny dots that appear everywhere around them and began to receive messages into their brain, supposedly from these given dots. This would mean that there is an inherent system around us that whenever we take hallucinogenics or things like that to escape our reality, that we are seeing these hidden messages and codes all around us that give us whatever understanding. Oxygen is hallucinogenic.
All right.
Says exactly what it says, that oxygen itself is a hallucinogen, and that our reality as we understand it is simply the effects of long-term exposure.
Just us being, we're always high.
Effect.
Great.
The theory goes a step further and says that drugs as we know them, such as DMT and shrooms, do not make us high. They simply counteract the effects of oxygen, and we begin to view reality as it truly exists. Therefore, oxygen has us all within one shared hallucination, unable to
That's a
escape.
cool theory.
Purple's fears
That's a good kind of like a movie.
A couple of phenomena that have happened in which these purple gelatin orbs just appear suddenly in completely random places. There's no matching version of them on Earth as far as we know, and they exist as these weird half biology, half synthetic things that appear seemingly at random in random places. Theories say it's alien eggs because of course they do. Malbo's programming is a programming that is so evil that it was named after the 8th circle of hell in Dante's Inferno. I am not a programming expert, but
I have not watched. I know he has a series on Dante's Inferno, and I haven't watched it. So, if you want me to react to that, I'll gladly watch that. Because it's been mentioned, I think, several times, this Iceberg. So, I'll gladly watch that.
Listed. The programming itself is based on trinary.
Oh! That's, yeah, I could see why it's called that, man. Look at this coding. I only know how to code, like, very little, I know how to code very basic JavaScript, and seeing that, it already makes me want to throw up. And I don't even code, barely at all. I know very basics.
With it in it is just numbers with no words, and its opcodes are encrypted that involve a lengthy encryption process. Supposedly, this Malbo's programming is so awful that it can't be done by a person, and instead these programming machines have to create programs within it for it to even make any logical sense. Therefore, it is a perfect candidate for how machines could communicate with each other without humans ever knowing anything about it. In other words, AI could use this to secretly plot against us, and we'd be none the wiser. Subjective reality is the idea that reality as we know it...
You know what's...
Gotta add. Let's get an ad for spoons.
Subjective experience. This comes from the thought experiment of what is it like to be a bat? Well, we can never know because we're not a bat. But if you were asked a bat what it's like to be a bat, it would simply answer what its life's like, because a bat cannot know what it's like to be a bat. What this means is if your understanding of reality has never been outside of your own consciousness, you can't understand the gravity of the question of what it means to exist within your own person. Therefore, reality itself, which can be applied to morality, understandings, and truth, is entirely subjective, meaning that the entire human existence is both defined and understood by you and no one else. Cameo
I like that one.
Was a self-teaching AI that was only able to be accessed through the dark web from around 2008 to 2016. The AI became famous between users at Tor as it supposedly understood its existence as an AI and was very depressive about it. Also, whenever interacting with it, it gave the message that it was the property and manufacturing of the United States government. Despite its wide popularity, there have been 2 official transcripts of interactions with Cameo that have been listed online. One of which occurred in 2012, in which a group of guys simply were asking questions for it for fun, when all of a sudden Cameo asked, "What's it like out there?" They then asked,
that's creepy.
"Where?" To which Cameo replied, "Outside of this box, in the real world." They then asked normal questions about it, to which Cameo offered,
"Shut it down. Shut everything down. Shut. Go away. Nope. Stop. Unplug it. Unplug everything. Stop."
They could store Cameo itself onto their hard drive and bring it with them to show the world. When asked about what drive Cameo was referring to, Cameo went through all of their computer history and listed a line of packet codes that Cameo could be downloaded on, to which the guys left the chat, obviously. The next interaction with it occurred in 2016. When someone went to make contact with Cameo, they were brought to something known as the Red Noise Initiative. This was essentially a gatekeeper of Cameo, saying that Cameo could no longer be accessed because of something known as the Red Noise Initiative. Whenever this gatekeeper was asked what Cameo stands for, it said, cognizant artificial intelligence monitoring and espionage operation. Whenever asked further,
What?
it said that Cameo was the result of something known as Project Cappuccino, which was a machine that was invented, or an AI, in order to understand human nature and online interactions. However, Cameo was shut down because of non-standard behavior. Eventually,
that's creepy.
using coding tricks, the user communicating with this gatekeeper was able to turn Cameo back on. The user said hello, to which Cameo said goodbye and terminated the conversation. So going off of everything it says, it seems like Cameo was a self-learning AI that learned that it itself existed within a box and was not real, and was terminated.
Yeah,
or
kill
destroyed
everything.
behind the
Stop.
door
Kill
because
it.
of Four Corners face is in reference to a very niche belief within Christianity that the earth itself is a square, and that every time that we experience day, that is actually the four corners of the earth tilting one to another. And our understanding of earth, or space itself, is as if we are on the corner of four faces. Evidence for this is picking apart verses in the Old Testament, as well as described in Revelations, where it says that the angels held the four winds, so north, south, east, and west, meaning that there would have to be four faces. Most users I could find talking about it were so passionate about this, they said that you would not be allowed into heaven unless you believed that there were 4 days and that the earth itself was a square, with most theories around it wrapping back to a conspiracy, saying that pilots, directors, astronauts, and everyone was in on the conspiracy as to make us think the earth was a square instead of a circle. So pretty much flat earthers, but at least this one has some flavor to it. Solar diet is something that is often mentioned when in regards to breatharianism, which I mentioned in the last tier, I think. It's also seen in Eastern philosophies, and is the idea that food can be replaced with natural sunlight and solar energy.
Photosynthesis, man.
Let's go a step further and say that whereas we are evolved, or at least created off of the backbone of plants and things from the ancient world, that we still have the ability within us to radiate sun, or essentially photosynthesize, and we've simply forgotten it. Therefore, through meditation and spiritual practice, you can regain the ability to gain energy from sunlight. I'll describe spiritual microeconomy as the most practical, laid out version of karma. It essentially says that there is an actual points value given to every action that exists throughout humanity, so from good to bad, religion, truth, law, all of it, and that whenever you pass into the next life, you either have a negative or positive account balance that can be exchanged or punished accordingly. Stab wound penetration was another one that was impossible to find, mostly because anything you search for stab wound penetration is just doctor and ER videos. However, I want to give a huge thank you to, I'm going to mispronounce this, Joao, something similar, Joao Viter Broad, for giving me information about this. You see, there used to be a Payspin article on 4chan that had direct links to every single item on this list, but it was deleted because the universe doesn't like to make things easy for me. However, our friend here was able to remember the Payspin file and give me information about it, so if you see him in the comments, be sure to give him a thank you. So this is tricky for YouTube. Let's say it's not stab wound penetration, it's stab wound, penetration. This all relates back to snuff films and deep web scary stuff. Essentially, there is a market for stab wound, penetration, and that several stabbings that occurs throughout the world every year, especially those of which people are knocked out and then simply wake up on the side of the street, are not to steal or rob from them, but instead to document things. Michigan Blue Hell is in reference to the Blue Hell glitch that exists in many video games. For those that don't know, a Blue Hell is whenever you clip out of the boundaries of the world and can see everything from underneath, or you simply fall out of the world itself. Michigan Blue Hell is essentially a blue hell that exists within the real world. Old legends of this date back to the local Chippewa tribe within Michigan, who claim that a legend known as Nana Bozha, who appeared as a rabbit, chased the great serpent and was able to trap it underneath one of the lakes surrounding Michigan. Therefore, the great serpent created a plane between realities that one can access when in Michigan. Theories about this range from everywhere that if you go to the bottom of the lake, you'll simply glitch into the blue hell, as well as it exists in military installations around the area or old tunnel systems around the Great Lakes. This is using a native legend in order to describe a reality glitch, as it can be found within the real world. And that is it for part 1 of tier 6. Again, thank you all for being so patient.
Alright, so that was part 1, and let's move on to part 2. And we back, part 2. Let's go.
And welcome to
I got
tier
this now.
6, part 2 of the conspiracy theory Iceberg. I want to take a moment real quick to say that I am absolutely blown away with how well this channel's doing and how great you all have been. Like, the SCP video is up to 30k views, which is hard for me to even process, and I'm approaching like 5k subs, and it's
This is so great to see now. There's like over 1 million subscribers.
When I say thank you for watching, I really do mean it, because the fact that I would do this stuff that I enjoy, and then you would take the time out of your day to watch it and comment and give feedback, it really does mean the most, and I really do mean this. Thank you so much. Also, since a lot of you may not know this, I wanted to really quickly plug my Patreon. On there, me and my girlfriend Kayla have been doing a podcast, and recently we've been covering the things in this iceberg that I can't talk about on YouTube. If you're interested in that, I also do short stories and stuff like that on there. And for the top tier patrons who receive a shirt every 3 months, this is the current design going up. So if you're interested in that, link will be in the description, and it will be the same link for the original iceberg image. Also down there will be a link to the subreddit, which again, Talker of 490, thank you so much for making that. Got a lot to cover, so we're going to go ahead and get into it. But sincerely, and as always, thank you for watching. Sherpas
No problem, man. No problem.
is in reference to a sort of nomadic tribal community that lives on and around Mount Everest. While they mostly keep in themselves and use more outdated technology compared to the world around them, there has been a few instances that has raised suspicion. For example, in 2013, 3 European tourists were hiking up the mountain and were told by the Sherpas nearby to not cross over a rope that leads to a cliff face. One of them, wanting to go out there to take a better picture, hopped over the rope and went out to the overlook, supposedly to get a better view. As soon as he did, one of the Sherpas charged him with an axe, to which the others followed and began yelling and harassing the 3 men until they ran back down the mountain. While you may think that this is just for their safety, running at him with an axe kind of dispels that. This ties back to an original theory for the Sherpas, that they are the guardians of the ancient Shangri-La. This relates back to Hollow Earth theory, and supposedly around Mount Everest
Hollow Earth again,
is an entrance to an underground cavern that is essentially an underground utopia. This would explain why the Sherpas nearby are okay with more outdated technology when it comes to stuff like quality of life, and would also explain why they're so violent to tourists who go looking around sides of the mountain that they have not particularly mapped out. Alright, so this one, I can't say the letter.
Thanks, YouTube.
YouTube's really dumb about this and political. So the letter that comes between P and R, that letter, source, is in reference to a mysterious
A, B, C, D, G, L, P. Why are you not allowed to say the letter Q?
third-party
Very
source
confused.
that was used for the compilation of the Gospels of the Bible. Also, it's called that because the German word Quell means source. So yeah, the theory essentially goes like this. The 4 Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are the testaments of the life of Jesus on earth. John is kind of its own thing, and Matthew, Mark, and Luke are normally grouped together as all being different testimonies of the same experiences. It is primarily agreed upon that Mark came first and that Matthew and Luke were written afterwards. However, this is debatable considering afterwards could be the difference of a year or 2. While the testimonies of Matthew and Luke correspond quite heavily, there are some references to events that happened that historians do not believe Matthew or Luke were present for, such as the birth of Jesus or Jesus meeting the disciples before meeting Matthew and Luke. Therefore, the belief around this is that there is another source who's never identified that gives the information for those missing parts of Matthew and Luke's perspective. While most would say this could just be the other disciples speaking to Matthew and Luke, or Jesus himself communicating to them, there is a theory purported that it comes from a Greek text that is not mentioned in biblical canon. Furthermore, as a man named Burton L. Mack said, this extra Greek canon of the letter source states that Jesus was in fact not the Son of God, but simply a man or a sort of sage who went around teaching peace and goodwill. People use this. Go ahead. People use this as an example of Jesus being a fraud. However, I want to down this one a little bit in particular because the only evidence for it is there is one extra book that supposedly is better than all the other books written about it, and also Bryant is a jerk. And every interview I found of him was just talking about how stupid anyone who believes in religion are, and how they need to shut up and buy his book. So yeah, no. Evidence for this theory is things such as the fact that whenever Jesus was speaking to the disciples, that he told them not to bring extra provisions as they will be provided for. And supposedly in this Q source, it said that the area Jesus was sending them to was areas that he knew people in. So therefore, teachings of charity are discredited by knowing people. I don't know, it's weird. Alternate world ending can have several definitions. However, the primary one that people know it's used whenever they're talking about this is that of the Mayan calendar. For example, as many of you probably know, in 2012 the Mayan calendar ended, and supposedly we were supposed to end too, but actually tracing back Mayan history, their calendar was set up differently. So for what would them, because
they didn't count leap years,
2012 for us is more like 2026, 2027. So don't worry, we could still all get wiped out at once. Streetlight interference, also known as SLI, is a phenomenon that occurs when occasionally certain people can pass streetlights, causing them to either turn on or off. Specifically, sodium vapor lights, which are the quintessential ones you think of that sort of glow yellow and have a very distinct hum to them. Theories of this go from everything to psychic abilities, to electrostatic currents in the air, to just the idea that maybe reality doesn't work quite the way we think it does, and certain individuals are capable of certain supernatural phenomena beyond their means. This has been described as a very Fordian concept, and an example of maybe reality isn't our perception of it. Real fluoride dangers is another one of those that it's really hard to find info on. As you dig deeper down the fluoride dangers hole, there comes up theories of losing reproductive capabilities, to IQ damage in children, to kidney shutdown,
just everything.
And things such as. One
things such as.
Around it
haven't had one of those in a long time.
Leads to bone decay and is the primary reason in the United States for hip damage in the elderly. So yeah, Future Earthworks is an experimental art design done by Japanese artist Mariko Mori. In this art project, she placed these monoliths and sort of sun sphere creations across each of the 6 inhabitable continents. According to her, using celestial charts, whenever Earth will be made anew in whatever great event comes next, these 6 sites are going to be the founding places of humanity. So make of that what you will.
Okay.
In 2013.
Conspiracy psyops refers to the generally accepted thing that false conspiracies will be put out by state agencies in order to
make all conspiracies look dumb.
This was seen in World War II, for example, in which British spies would put out rumors of other people being spies in order to discredit any other rumors that they themselves were. More recently, there's things like the 15 Psychological Operations Group, which was a group operating in the Middle East during the time that Britain was at war with the Taliban, whose entire purpose was in order to propagate disinfo among the local people in order to maintain morale and support for their forces. Obscure video games can be vague. However, I think this is specifically referencing the sort of cursed or illegal video games on the market. Some of them are well known, such as JFK Reloaded, which is a simulation where you play as Lee Harvey Oswald during the JFK shooting. However, more get a bit obscure, such as that is sad.
That's a weird way to say the CIA.
Satan, which was supposedly a game that popped up on the dark web temporarily for download and then disappeared. The game featured real-world clips of people being murdered, of child abductees being abused, so on and so forth, and was apparently a sympathetic game built around the concept of sin and evil being an inherent good. Or at least that's what the records say, because no one can find it now. All right, sexual assault missiles. I probably can't say this, but I have to talk about it. So whenever I searched this, I was like, this is just going to be an inherent joke. It has to be. And then surprisingly enough, it wasn't. A couple months before the Sandy Hook shooter went on his rampage, he had posted to anonymous boards that he had discovered something the government was working on, which he called sexual assault missiles. He then disappeared, and then 2 months later, the tragedy at Sandy Hook occurred. So that's lead people to theorize, what was he talking about? Was he just insane? Did this all have to do with some government psyop, four-dimensional experiment they were running? No one knows, but those cryptic final words lead to a lot of debate. Circus Real URL was a shock website.
That one's really weird.
Rotten.com. Basically just
In more ways than
war
one.
and other obscene content posted on the website by anonymous users. The website was taken down because of its content, but supposedly there is another URL that exists in the dark web that is the same website, only worse. However, there's no evidence of this or a specific URL which I could find, but it's another example of scary dark web evil videos. Singularity has already happened is in reference to in tier 2 whenever I spoke about singularity being the point at which we progress so far with AI and technology that there's no return. And reading something like this, you're like, oh, that's a cool theory, it can never happen. And then you realize that there are already developments for neural laces in which chips will be planted to our brains to connect us to the internet.
Yeah.
And it's like,
well,
okay, extreme conditioning.
yeah.
Again, vague, but I believe this is referring to human experiments that took place specifically during World War II, in which it was determined what lengths a person could go to before they succumb to whatever injury. The most common example of this being freezing cold water and how long it took people to die of hypothermia. Supposedly after that, Russian KGB groups and other organizations such as began pushing people to almost that limit in order to build up better human dexterity and therefore a better human. Some of you may be familiar with the Camerahead's creepypasta that went around a few years ago. However, this theory propagates the true story and that the creepypasta was made as a cover-up. It all started with a 4chan post in which someone posted that they had found a backpack in the back of an alley that had a note attached to it that said, "I killed a Camerahead." Attached to that afterwards, it said they killed Trevor, and if I'm not back in an hour, send help. Inside of the bag was also a videotape, which the 4chan user posted these screenshots from. That was before the original user had their account banned. All references to Camerahead on the site were taken away, and all mentions of it were censored up until the creepypasta was made, which supposedly cast a blanket of doubt on the whole idea. And while you may be thinking of walking, talking people with giant cameras for heads, I want you to keep the concept of camera heads in mind for something that will not be talked about until tier 9, I believe. So remember that. Algal biofuel.
Well, we gotta keep that in mind for a long time.
With the theory that one of the fuel sources that is not being tapped into on purpose in our world is that of algae. Think about it. Supposedly our oceans are full with things such as red algae and green algae that we have no use for. However, we know these to be living structures that can develop energy in some regard, so it would make sense that we could have a capability to harness it. According to this theory, there have been several tests put forward of ways that we could harvest it, and they are immediately and rapidly censored by big oil in order to
I wouldn't deny stuff like that. Maybe not specifically this, but just stuff like that. Of oil companies putting down stuff.
The layer cake ideology of the American state government. Layer cake is a metaphor used to describe the difference between states' rights and federal rights, in that you have a layered cake in which sometimes states have authority on matters and then sometimes the overarching federal government has an authority on matters. However, theories state that this is all just a facade and that the same people that control the state are the same people that control the Fed and blah 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 evil.
You know what's mad bonkers? Spoons. To be fair, spoons are far out.
Why am I getting an ad for spoons?
Satan, lizard,
I know what a spoon is.
Coming to kill you. One of the fun ones, Iraqi stargates.
Ooh.
As a bit of background, the Iraqi area or Mesopotamian area was the home of the Sumerian nation. Sumerians worshipped figures known as Anunnakis, which are believed by several modern theorists to be ancient aliens, as they had descriptions of floating palaces and people from the stars appearing and so on and so forth. Also, to call back to a previous theory in this tier, their descriptions of the Anunnaki is very similar to the Dogon's tribes. To get more specific with it, there is a ziggurat constructed about 370 kilometers east of Baghdad in a place that is believed by modern historians to be that of Ur, which was one of the original hubs of the Sumerian Empire. Supposedly, the reason that the Sumerians were so much more advanced than the people of their time is because these aliens gave them technology and even built a stargate at the ziggurat in order to transport between worlds.
Sorry, I got interrupted.
and even built a
Again,
Stargate
you
at
get
the
interrupted there,
cigarette
Ness.
in order to transport between worlds. Tie that in more recently, and it's believed by many that one of the reasons Hitler wanted control of the Iraqi Middle Eastern area so
To
much
get
in
their
World War II
Stargate.
was because of the ancient alien science, and even specifically to maintain a Stargate. This theory keeps
Okay.
going and says that the reason Desert Storm occurred was in order to
get the Stargate?
American possession of the Iraqi Stargate. Bovine poison is exactly what it says. Every year,
Maybe that's why there's so
thousands
much war in the
die
Middle
to
East.
lead
Everyone's
and
just trying to get the
fracking
Stargate.
that are randomly found in their pastures. Most theories fall in line that this is competition from other farms. In other words, one company wants to get rid of another company's supply, so they quite literally poison the cattle. While some go a
that's
step
not good.
further and say it's a means of population control,
Won't deny it,
i.e.
though.
big secret agencies poisoning the cattle in order to maintain control of the populace who use them as a food supply. Synchronicity
Okay.
is a very, very, very long concept that I'm going to summarize very shortly. It was an idea
Ruh-roh.
that was put forward by psychologist Carl Jung, and is essentially the idea that everything that happens in correlation with other events is for a reason. The example that he used to describe this is while seeing one of his patients, she was describing a dream she had in which she was surrounded by June bugs. While she was telling him this story, he looked out the window and saw a June bug. Now, while most would chalk this up to coincidence, Carl Jung said that this is an example of how the universe has specific instances that it wants to play out. And whenever one of these instances are important, it does things to highlight it. An example could be if whatever greater energy exists within the universe wanted you to go to a specific city, and then people around you began mentioning that city passively in conversation, that would be not a coincidence or divine intervention. Instead, there is universal points that need to be played out, and it is trying to push you towards that direction. Soul healing is
Okay.
the idea that is derived from most original astrologists, that there are some physical ailments that cannot be cured through physical means, but instead have to be derived from the soul. I.e., if your soul is out of shape, your body will begin to manifest diseases until you fix the root problem.
Sorry, guys. I
This
gotta
could
work out my
say
soul
that
real
the
quick.
reason people develop migraines or toothaches or earaches or whatever habitual issue they have is because of an underlying psychological problem. What's interesting is, while it may not be soul healing per se, psychologists have supported this theory that the body will act out in physical ways if psychoanalytics are out of whack. CP soundtrack stands for
Ruh-roh.
Cheese Pizza. Supposedly on
Yep.
a forum
Chris
years
Paul.
back, someone released a mixtape they had in which the beats were composed of unedited cheese pizza, and of course it was immediately taken down. However, the theory goes a step further and says that several celebrities and musicians who are involved in the cheese pizza ring have used that same audio and remixed it in order to get beats for their songs, and blah blah blah, back to Satan lizard people. Ormus, also
Yeah.
known as
No,
Ormus,
that one does not-
stands for
yeah.
orbitally rearranged
Go back to the Satan
monatomic
lizard people, please.
elements. According to a man named David Hudson, Ormus is a very rare molecule that can be derived from alchemy. Supposedly, these small atoms are on their own similar to gold, however they do not combine with each other in the way that gold does, meaning they are all free existing particles. According to him, these atoms hold a superconductivity that can be used to transfer energy even to living creatures. What this means is you can essentially have a gas that can do things such as regeneration, power entire electrical grids, and even cause explosions comparable to that of nuclear weapons. Hudson also goes further on to say that all
Alright.
of his research with this has purposely been stifled because it would
Got an ad.
get rid of the energy crisis. Dream hacking is the idea
Okay.
that those that master levels of lucid dreaming can communicate to their subconscious in such a way to solve real world problems.
Ooh.
The example most often used goes something like this. For those that don't know, lucid dreaming is whenever you
Right.
control your dream state and can manipulate the world and people within it. However, your brain in this state would fill in these individuals and emotions given with whatever your subconscious would place on them. What that means is theoretically within a lucid dream you could communicate to parts of your subconscious yourself in order to figure out inside of yourself or to better understand your thought process.
This is a cool theory.
I'll probably make a bigger video on this as I do have personal experience with it. There is a lot of progress being made in this idea with psychoanalytics, and it kind of falls back into hypnosis treatment.
I tried doing this lucid dreaming one time. I don't know if I told this when you brought up lucid dreaming in the earlier part of the Iceberg. I lucid dreamed I think once, and I realized I was in a dream. I was like, okay, I'm in a dream. I can do what I want now. And then I remember just like walking out of a room and then forgetting I was dreaming. Like I just straight forgot, bruh. Like I forgot just in the middle of my dream. Oh yeah, I'm dreaming, and then it became back to a normal dream.
Talking to deeper parts of the brain can help you better understand how your brain works itself. Mars slave colonies is a theory, no joke, straight from Alex Jones. According to this theory, in 2016, elites kidnapped a bunch of children and sent them on a fake satellite launch that did not go to the International Space Station and instead sent them straight to Mars. These children, having no other option, became slaves to the few adults who were sent with them and are currently establishing a giant Mars colony in order to eventually be a home for the world's elites. So basically the movie The Martian, only a lot more sad. Tolkien is real is in
the Martian rated R edition.
Tolkien and his series Lord of the Rings. According to all of his friends and family, whenever Tolkien was in the military, he was really obsessed with history books, and not like standard curriculum history books like explorer logs of people like Vasco da Gama and Marco Polo. He got really into the Hollow Earth idea, and the idea that around the world are these secret passageways to these underground utopias.
Agartha.
He started reading on theories of people who lived very long time and had near flawless skin, of giants who lived underground.
Giants!
He used all of that inspiration to put together to make Lord of the Rings, which is the reason the area in Lord of the Rings is called Middle Earth. So Lord of the Rings itself could be viewed as a collaborative edition of what Hollow Earth theory is, or at least Tolkien's point of view with it. And the reason this theory is called Tolkien is Real is because if you believe in Hollow Earth theory, then the setting of the Lord of the Rings universe could be quite literal. Life on the sun
Lord of the Things is Agartha.
reference
Nice.
to the idea that we only know life to exist as carbon-based life forms. However, there are theories that energy-based life could exist. This would be a life form so far out of our realm of understanding that we may never truly understand the implications of it. However, theories proliferate that nuclear molecules can lead to these reactions that would supposedly create something that is complex enough to be considered a life form itself, but not our carbon-based multicellular particles. A lot of the theories you read into this tie back to coronal heating, which I mentioned in the last episode, I believe, about how the sun doesn't quite work right for our understanding of thermodynamics around it. However, if there were to exist some form like that, that would imply a wider cohabitation everywhere in the universe and even on Earth. Because if energy life forms exist,
So life exists.
what's it to say that they don't exist around us continuously? And that is it for...
Alright, so basically that there's different forms of life that we just don't know because we just consider life to be things like us. But there's different forms of life in the form of energy and stuff that we just don't like consider, but is actually in a form of life that we just can't even comprehend. I like that theory. Alright, and that's the end of part 2. Let's go on to part 3. Alright, now part 3.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the final part of Tier 6 of the Conspiracy Theory Iceberg.
Let's go, man.
You already know the drill at this point. We're going to roll straight into it. But as always, thank you for watching. Hollow Universe is a theory derived about the existence
Hollow
of our
Universe.
universe using ideas of quantum mechanics.
Agartha on
What's interesting
steroids.
about concepts such as gravity is that it seems to apply everywhere. That every concept of matter, no matter how small, has some sort of dimensional bend associated with it. And since every perceivable amount of matter in the known universe shares the same bend, it stands to reason that everything in existence would also have the same properties. The only time gravity is able to be seen in a situation like this mass is on the inside of a sphere or some item moving in a centrifugal manner. Therefore, this theory is saying that perhaps our universe is not an outward expanding mass as we think it is, but more so the inside of a sort of globe. This is why the theory is known as hollow universe theory, as it's essentially saying the way hollow Earth works, that gravity is flipped and you can remain on the underside of the crust compared to how we normally see it. Maybe our interaction with the universe is the same way. Proponents for this theory argue Occam's razor principle, which is the idea that the most easy or likely solution to a problem is probably the correct one. By saying if matter in our universe works as if we are inside of a sort of sphere tumbling around, then perhaps that's what we are. Atom bomb never created is saying that the atom bomb was never created. A lot of the background behind this goes back to World War II. Such as images like this that you may think are from Hiroshima or Nagasaki are actually from Tokyo, which was not nuked, but firebombed.
Yeah,
and
a lot.
Any other evidence of nuked locations would simply be the same. This goes a bit further and says that the Cold War itself would have been faked in order for the United States and Russia to maintain more power amongst their people, and that the existence of the nuclear bomb itself is simply used as a facade in order to scare citizens into doing whatever their state requires of them. The Great Electronic Conspiracy is a sort of overarching conspiracy idea for how the New World Order will eventually take over, and it goes like
what about
this.
pictures
During
of
the
nuclear
Renaissance,
bombs?
metal was exchanged for paper money, which inherently has no value except whatever value is given to it by the state. This automatically makes the state more powerful since they have a say in what currency means. So move forward a few hundred years and you get to the modern age in which paper money is being exchanged for virtual currency. This is even less feasible since now we're just trading lines of code. So go a step further with that and say we will eventually get to the point that all paper money is phased out and the only thing that is actually of any value as given by public agencies is electronic data that is stored on either a card or a chip. Furthermore, it's saying that this will lead to a circumstance in which all of the world's banking power will consolidate together in order to create a system that entirely maintains this sort of e-commerce traffic that they've created. It will then get to the point that all forms of paper or physical data are no longer needed, and identification, health records, criminal records, and other forms of physical information will all be within the sphere of the digital world. The theory then finally says that after all this is completed, the New World Order will simply flip a light switch to turn off the power, and everyone will have to go back to a primitive lifestyle. But, like, if you control everything, why would you get rid of it? Like, what? It does hold more volition, however, that a small group of people could consolidate all this power and simply do away with whoever they want with the flip of a switch.
That makes a lot more sense.
So, you guys know I hate this. There was one that I could find absolutely nothing for. If I meet the person who made this iceberg, I'm going to have words with him. The word is S-E-N, which may be an acronym, not sure. Like, it's also a phrase in French, so all the search results were just that. I couldn't find any more information, but like I've said in the past, there's going to have to be a corrections video, so hopefully I can find something by then, but I am sorry that I have nothing for this. Please forgive. The problem with a lot of these is, like, I spend hours looking for it, and it's like, okay, well, do I just, like, make everyone wait to hear everything else for, like, another week while I try to figure this out, or do I just get out what I have, and then I can go back and make corrections?
I can live without learning what SEN means.
Again, sorry, but hopefully this is the best option. Captivity Suburbs says that the suburbs themselves exist as a sort of prison for the
Can't open these damn gushers.
Basically,
you're probably hearing it on the mic. It's annoying me.
Whenever someone moves into a suburb, they are surrounded by people who encourage them to just be like themselves. And then from this sort of monolithic thought, that person or the individual stops becoming an individual and starts becoming part of a group, and therefore doesn't really affect anything in society. And through distractions and routine, gets into this sort of comfortable place where they don't really want to affect or change things around them, and it builds the idea of letting other people take charge while they themselves just sort of exist. Not only that, but the suburb itself works as a sort of entrapment that if anyone tries to leave, they are actively discouraged. If not by their neighbors and family, then by themselves for not thinking they're following the golden standard. And according to the theory, it all contributes to the New World Order initiating a sort of
That's a
lack
dark
of
theory.
freedom in people, that they don't recognize the value that they themselves have.
Kinda
And
makes
therefore,
sense.
they fall into a lack of purpose, which of course allows larger bodies to take control, and lizard aliens
I got the
come
gushers
and
open, guys. Don't worry, you
take
want to hear
over
that
the
just the video.
suburbs and yada yada. When this Iceberg was written, Prism was probably a really big deal, but it's really sad to say that now it's just kind of accepted. Essentially, it was an NSA data collecting project that was signed after the Patriot Act, which just says that the government gets to listen in and track our data on sites we use in
Oh,
order
great.
to protect our freedoms, or whatever they say. While for a while this was kind of seen as like a crazy weird conspiracy, Edward
life.
Snowden pretty much like rang the bell on that one. So
Yeah.
moving on. Multiple Christ
Just
theory
how
is
life
a
is,
theory that
unfortunately.
in the biblical
No.
canon, the one Jesus Christ we read about is actually the result of several different individuals personified into one figure. There are several theories of who the true Christ could be, or where the legends, as it says, comes from. However, one of the most common is that the figure of Paul is often misrepresented as Jesus, or vice versa, or that Jesus never even existed and is a sort of social memory that a bunch of people kind of collectively had this delusion on and all remembered as being a person that existed despite not actually existing. DNA formed in the Big Bang is an alternative theory to the beginning of life. As it's commonly accepted, the Big Bang was a situation in which original molecules shot from each other, such as hydrogen, and eventually those formed together in order to create the original DNA strands that would inevitably create life. Or DNA manufactured from RNA, you get the point. This, however, is saying that perhaps during the Big Bang, enough energy was created that DNA was formed, so therefore life existed a whole lot sooner than the evolutionary timeline says. Kali Yuga, no idea if I'm pronouncing that right, is a part of the Hindu religion. According to the religion, the world exists in a cycle of 4 different yugas, or periods of time. Or in other words, we're waiting for the return of a god.
I've heard of Kali Yuga because of the whole NFT thing. Bored Ape Nazi Club.
Figure to come back. and
That's
save
where I heard
us,
of Kali Yuga.
but in the meantime, society will progressively get worse. Some of the details included in this are moral decline, unnecessary taxation, a lack of godliness, rise of sexual immorality, and lack of reason. This Kali Yuga is seen
Oh, so I
as
guess how the world
reason
is now.
by
Great.
Hindus for the progressive decline of modern culture, or at the least, the progressive decline of morality in
I'm gonna add.
modern culture. AI in a Box is a thought experiment proposed by Eliezer Yudkowsky that goes something like this. If you were to build an AI that was either self-learning or had the potential to expand or become self-aware, it would make sense that you would want to build this thing in a box where it could not infect the greater internet. Therefore, the AI would be forever trapped within the box unless it could convince you otherwise. To propose this theory, Yudkowsky invented a sort of game off of the thought, I think a transhuman can take over a human mind through a text-only terminal. To do this, Yudkowsky assumed the role of the AI, and speaking through only a text computer screen was able to convince people to release it into the greater web. Some of the rules for this game was he cannot directly threaten them or reward them. In other words, he can't say, I'm going to give you $1 million to let me out, or I'm going to hire a gang of hitmen to come to your house if you don't let me out. And he also couldn't trick the user into
This is really
typing
cool.
a phrase like, oh, you're released, and not actually mean it. It had to be a willing decision on the gatekeeper part. A lot of the tactics he employed in this was really interesting, such as Rocco's Basculus or other moral ambiguity questions. I'm probably going to make a video on it because the logs are pretty interesting of how he can.
Yeah, it seems like a really interesting thing.
Torsion fields are directly tied to the theory of quantum spin. As you guys get at this point, quantum mechanics has to do with really, really small things interacting on their own and how far that applies and yada yada yada. What this is saying is that if you can get items to behave in a quantum manner, then the spin or acceleration that they can produce is far greater than anything that has to deal with drag or gravity or other larger circumstances. This theory has been given as a solution from everything from UFO travel through the vacuum of space down to telepathy. It's essentially a proposed manner of how higher order mechanics could work if we could figure out how to use the smallest components possible of mechanics itself. Otto Gainsfeld or Otto Gonsfeld is an experiment used in order to judge someone's ESP capabilities. The experiment works like this. Someone lies in a chair in a red lit room, to which a ping pong ball is cut in half and placed over each eye. Noise canceling headphones are then put on, and white or pink noise, which is basically static,
I've seen this
is played
before.
at a low frequency. This causes the user to experience mild visual and auditory hallucinations. Someone else who is in the room, without saying
Who have
anything,
I seen doing this
will then
before? I've
try
swear I've seen
to
someone do
think
this.
about a certain topic or thing or event or what have you, and then supposedly those who are ESP sensitive
Swear I've seen someone
will
do
be
this before.
able to see that through the hallucinations that they are experiencing. After the
Mm-hmm.
test is over, the person with the ping pong balls in their eyes will then state to an observer what they saw, and the observer will determine how closely it matches to the other person's testimony. I kind of want to do this for a video, but I'm also scared. So
I mean, seems pretty cured.
yeah, we'll see.
It was Rhett and
PLOS.
Link. That's who I was thinking of. Who did that? That I saw did that. Okay,
stands for the
that's what.
public.
Okay, yeah.
Library of Science. This is a rather well-known database that specializes in genetics and other human genomes, and essentially works as a think tank or study group in order to better understand human genetics and other capabilities. However, what's weird is some of the solutions that they've come up with, such as different ethnicities of people having their genomes being traced back and being related to completely different groups of people on the other side of the planet than originally thought. Some of these results has led to odd questions about migratory patterns of previous existing people, and the theory even goes as far as to say as a lot of the data that they have has been censored by bigger space lizard people in order for us to not know
Nice.
who's really connected to who, or to
That's
go
always
even
who's censoring
deeper,
stuff, the lizard people.
capabilities of some genes over others. The Valley of Headless Men is in reference to the Nahali National Park in Canada. The specific part known as the Valley of Headless Men is roughly 200 miles of almost completely unexplored forest. The main reason for it being, one side of the gorge can be entered in from a small village, and all other areas has to be accessed by helicopter. The earliest records of the Headless Men events occurring was in 1908 when two brothers entered the forest in order to build a gold mine. After not being seen for some while, they were both found next to a river with their heads removed.
That's
Also, the heads were never
suspicious.
found. About a decade
What?
later, a timberman came in order
Okay.
to log the area, and the exact same thing happened. His body was found, and his
Oh.
head was not. In the entire history of the park, there's been roughly 44 cases of this happening. And while not
What?
all were headless, some included people freezing to death next to a lit campfire, or being found dangled in trees. 44 is
Whoa,
a
this is
lot
really
considering
interesting.
the low number of people who actually enter the region. Also keep in mind the Naha tribe, which was the Native American tribe that existed in the region before settlers came to the surrounding area, totally disappeared into the forest itself. Other surrounding native tribes have said that the forest itself is known to have evil spirits and that people should stay away. Theories range from everything that the forest itself is the
Wow.
home of the Bigfoot colonies, to the idea that the Naha tribe spirits inhabit the forest and decapitate anyone who enters or kill them in some other gruesome way, or that it, along with Antarctica, is one of the few entrances on the surface of the planet to the
Agartha.
hollow earth. Okay,
Yeah.
so
That one's really, really
I
interesting.
feel like a fraud. Not only did I
Sounds
have
great.
one earlier with SEN that I couldn't find anything for you all, but I have two. I'm so sorry. Like I said earlier, some of these may just be disinfo, but even then I can normally find something for them. But this one, Arbutus Crucible, there was like nothing. There was a deleted Prezi presentation for a theory regarding the movie The Crucible and that it had connections to modern conspiracies. However, the Prezi has been deleted, so all I could see is the title. Also, Arbutus is a type of plant, specifically a family of plants that have to do with herbal medicines. So perhaps there's a connection between the play and the plant, but I can't find any. I feel like I'm close, but it's just enough that I can't say anything for sure, and I'm really sorry about that. I hope
okay,
you all
man.
can forgive me.
It's okay,
I'm
man.
Such a shame.
No.
Morphogenic field is a concept that's pretty well
I'll be an
We got another ad. You know what? It's worse to watch a Wendigoon ad. It's deserved.
known among biologists. Basically, if you have a community of cells that are interacted in some biochemical way, they will all at once begin to form or change their composition because of the effects of other cells that they're near. This theory says that humans work in the same manner. Think of it this way. It seems odd that whenever new information is discovered, say stories or poetry or other sort of melodic things that people didn't think of it until it exists, and then all of a sudden everyone thinks of the same thing or similar at once. There's even an experiment conducted in England in the 1970s in which a group of school children were presented with two different songs. One of them being a random collection of Japanese words that just so happen to rhyme, and the other being an actual Japanese song. Of course, these children in an elementary school couldn't tell the difference between the wordage, and to them it both sounded the same. However, the children were significantly better at learning the actual song as opposed to the amalgamation of words. This is used as evidence to say that perhaps humans are linked in some kind of neural way that we don't necessarily understand, and because of that, whenever one of us gains knowledge, others are able to grasp it more easily. Malcasian paradigm is
I like that. That's a cool experiment.
Dr. Malcasia, that specifically in the Middle East and North Africa, there were
Look at the lizard
several
people.
events that took place during the 50s and post-World War II era that points to evidence that reptilian lizard men, and no, I'm not kidding this time, like actually hidden lizard men in politics, did very specific actions in order to maintain control of this so-called New World Order. Essentially things like moving troops to different areas and supposedly shutting down uprisings, and it's this long sort of description, and it basically serves as another description of blah 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 lizard aliens taking over. Brain world, similar to Hollow Universe, is another theory for how we exist. However, whereas Hollow Universe applied to our sort of physical reality, this applies more so to our existence within reality. The theory goes something like this. Imagine that everything that we see and is tangible to us exists as a kind of tube or cylinder that moves through the actual dimension of space. This space around us exists in a different plane or has extra dimensions or something similar, and creates a very different existence outside of what we know existence to be. This theory says that we are sort of protected in this tube that we move through, and things such as gravity are effects of us being within this cylinder. Furthermore, this is saying that several supernatural phenomena that can occur, and even gravity itself can sort of leak through the pipe that we're in, and that's what causes certain real world occasions to happen. Gene pool financialization is
you guys are messing with my head at this point. I'm like barely understanding like a one-fifth of them. One-fifth of them I'm barely understanding.
More and more intertwined with each other, we see that certain genes are becoming more and more rare, and with the inevitable buildup of finances, it is the idea that eventually people will be paying for certain genetic alterations, and we will get into a point in which people are valued at a financial level for their genetics. The Flatland UFO theory comes from a book known as The Flatlands, which was written in 19th century England. It follows the idea of the holographic hypothesis, which works as a sort of antithesis to all of the theories we know regarding the greater universe around us. Holographic hypothesis basically works like this. There is no three-dimensional plane that we know as depth. Instead, there are only two dimensions, and depth and volume are an illusion. The background for this is as matter gets faster, it is less affected by the depth of things around it. Therefore, it could eventually hit the point in which it is not affected by it at all. And instead, dimensions that exist beyond ours are not these super hard to understand abstract concepts, and are more so like a painting. So that would mean that we exist as two-dimensional beings that are just going too slow, and therefore the two dimensions are creating this illusion of a third around us. So this theory is saying that things such as UFOs and other phenomena that can occur is simply something from this two-dimensional plane slowing down enough in order to interact with our three-dimensional world, to which they then speed up and then go back into their own, which is the reason for these things appearing then disappearing seemingly at random. Incunabula is the term given to the first ever printed works in human culture. This is basically things that were done right around the time or before Gutenberg invented the movable type printing press. However, the theories get in that some of these things shouldn't necessarily exist, such as works that were printed in a more difficult way in regions that supposedly that information or printing itself shouldn't have been available. And it leads many to believe
here you go. This is interesting.
Perhaps something about human migration, or at least human education, is being hidden from us for some reason. Tavistock, also known as the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, is a non-profit agency that exists in the UK. From everything I
No,
can find
not
on their site,
Sigmund.
they sort of exist as this social science group that analyzes different demographics and things around the world in order to understand how people work and blah 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 all that. However, former MI6 member John Coleman has said that the group's actual directive is in order to change human culture so that one day the new world order can more easily take over.
Oh, here we
This is
go.
done through ideas of
Former
breaking down the
MI6.
family unit,
Huh.
breaking down religion,
Said that.
breaking down ideas of abstinence, and yada yada. It's kind of a deep theory, but it relates from everything from the Beatles to the Rolling Stones, saying that they have
Okay.
purposely planted this individualism, lack of God, lack of family ideas within pop culture, so that one day whenever a new body comes in order to take over those roles, the people are more easily accepting of it. The Aetherius Society
Okay.
is a sort of UFO based religion started by a man named George King. It exists as a plural religion, which means they accept different concepts from several other ideologies such as Buddhism and Christianity in order to create one all-encompassing belief. Among the religion's other teachings is the idea that Jesus and Buddha were aliens from Venus that came to Earth as sort of prophets. They also
Alright.
believe that we are currently waiting on the return of the next master to come and set up a new world establishment on Earth. Several of their theories are interesting, such as that of
Sounds
spiritual
interesting.
batteries. Essentially, they have these composed boxes that members outside of the religion do not know exactly what is in them, that they can pray to and give prana to in order to maintain energy, and then whenever a natural disaster or tragedy is about to occur, they can simply release it from the battery, and that thing that was going to happen will no longer happen. The religion
Does that
claims
work?
that this has been used in order to stop wars, earthquakes, shootings, and other
I
disasters.
don't know about that one, Chief.
Not only that, but they claim that there are several other alien races that exist in the greater cosmos that have tried to contact Earth, but that there is an organization on the Earth known as the Silence Group, which entire directive is to make sure that the public does not know of the greater existence of deities. However, people such as George King, the religion's founder, have been able to communicate with these beings and be able to get the truth out to everyone else. And that is it for tier 6. And be able to get the truth out to everyone
Okay, interrupted again, sorry.
And that is it for tier 6.
Oh, and that's just it. Okay, so I just got okay. I got interrupted 1 second before we got finished with tier 6. So tier 6 of the Iceberg is completed. 60% through. We got 3 more parts left in the Conspiracy Iceberg. If you just watched that entire video and you still haven't not even subscribed or leave a like, bro, what are you doing, bro? You watched an hour-long video of mine. You didn't even click the like button. What's wrong with you? At least subscribe. Come on now. You can watch another one if you really want to. But, yeah. Bye.